Hello, and thank you for joining the Unregulated Leadership podcast, where we are talking all things leadership. I'm Chris Oliveri, second-year student over at William James College, and I am a leadership psychology student, second-year doc student, and with me is my lovely co-host here, Dr. Lavonya Douglas.
Hello, hello. My name is Lavonya Douglas, and I am so excited to be here with y'all today. It's Monday for us. I don't know what day it's going to be when you're listening to it, but it's a happy Monday today.
Yes. Happy Monday. And we have a ray of sunshine with us today. We welcome Whitley Marshall, Compassionate Leadership Project founder, mind body compassion coach. So there's quite a bit here. When it comes to Whitley, she's a pioneering leader, speaker, and coach, dedicated to fostering compassionate, inclusive, and sustainable practices across the industries that she serves. As a visionary founder behind the Compassionate Leadership Project, Whitley truly empowers individuals and organizations to embrace empathy, integrity, and connection as core pillars of their leadership approach. So through her coaching platform, Mind Body Compassion Coaching, she offers transformative tools for personal and professional development, guiding clients towards mindful leadership and greater resilience. She is the editor-in-chief of Art, Love, Lifestyle magazine and founder of Art, Love, Lifestyle Attire, a sustainable fashion line dedicated to repurposing and recycling materials for minimal ecological footprint. So both her editorial and fashion projects reflect her commitment to social responsibility and her mission to uplift diverse voices and inclusive beauty standards. So Whitley's there's a whole lot going on here. So Whitley's overarching vision centers on redefining leadership to prioritize compassion, sustainability, and diversity. She believes that true leadership means empowering others and embracing purpose-driven values that inspire positive change in communities and beyond. Ooh, that was a mouthful. So Whitley, it is an absolute pleasure having you with us here today. How are you?
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you, thank you. So you certainly are, it's like, whoo, I broke a sweat with that intro, but you certainly, you're certainly a force. And just going through all of this, thinking about your pathway, right? Just kind of thinking about your whole trajectory, where you are today throughout the years, what led you here?
Well, that's a loaded question a little bit, but I would say that honestly, a whole lot of challenges along the way are what led me to where I am. I've been through a lot in my 39 years of life. From everything from overcoming addiction, being in having multiple near-death experiences, including a severe car accident, a rare lung disease that put me in a coma for 10 days, and really a lot of situations that gave me the lessons that I needed in order to get me here. When I moved to Maine right after that car accident, that took me out of school and work for 9 months. And shortly after ended up homeless in Maine, like only 6 months or less than 6 months into having been in Maine. So in that process, I ended up utilizing resources, services, and I had a lot of people that jumped on board as far as helping me to overcome those challenges at the age of 19. So literally almost exactly 20 years ago. And little did I know that what pulled me out of homelessness was I got a job at the American Red Cross which I ended up having a 16-year career working there in biomedical services. So if you think of like blood donation, platelet donation, plasma donation, red cell donation, that is what my career was for 16 years. I started off as a phlebotomist. I cross-trained in every single technology and then became a biomedical charge. 7 of those years, I ended up working at the same teen shelters that I received services from. And so you can see, so car accident, I received life-saving blood transfusions that led me in the direction of working in transfusion medicine. Same with overcoming homelessness. That then led me to work at Preble Street Teen Center and the Joe Chrysler Teen Shelter for 7 years alongside my job at the Red Cross. And through all of those experiences, it was actually through pageantry that made me clarify my vision through, I was asked a simple question of, if you could change one thing, what would you change and why? And I was like, oh, that is a deep question. Because if you know me, I'm a very insightful, deep thinker. So I kept thinking of various social issues, environmental issues. I've always been huge into animals. Actually, animal activism brought me into environmental activism. And the combination, what I realized is at the root of every single harm that came to mind, and that was the solution came down to the value of compassion. And so from there, I launched the Compassionate Leadership Project. And that's like also a whole other story, because there was a period of time in 2007 and 2008, I lived in Burundi in Centralish East Africa, and didn't end up returning due to a genocide-related violence situation to a close friend until 2019. And someone that I had volunteered for their organization in Rwanda, they ended up moving to Portland. So we co-founded Root Foundation, spearheaded the Compassionate Leadership Project, as well as World Roots Culture Exchange. And we essentially utilize all of those programs together in the different areas that the Root Foundation exists. So there's a center in Rwanda, there's a center in Germany, and now in Maine and in Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a lot to go over. Sorry about that.
It's amazing though, but they say the things that you go through are not for you, they're for other people. So even as you're describing your journey from moving to these different places and, just the challenges that you've had, the impact that you probably now have on people's lives is so impactful. I think about just a basic example, right? You go to the gym, someone's been tiny their entire life, and they want to talk to you about eating salad and chicken breast. And it's like, you don't even know the struggle, right? And so it's like you lived it. And so people that are going through the things that you have gone through, like you're able to like relate and have stories and all those different things. And I think a lot of times we miss the human connection based off of the things that we've experienced and overcome and transition to the next phase of our lives. So that's amazing. I want to hear more about your time in Africa. Like,
Yeah, it
yeah.
was amazing, really. That also ended up being sort of an unexpected blessing of moving to Maine. When I moved to Maine from the Chicago area, I ended up centered in the Central and East African immigrant community. And those were really the first people that accepted me into their culture, like their group as family in Maine. And I was invited almost immediately, like within a week of moving to Maine, I was invited to sing in an African gospel choir. And that was where the passion came from, as I saw these people with incredible joy through the arts, singing, dancing, visual arts. and they had experienced the most traumatic things beyond anything that I could imagine. And that really fascinated me in a way. I was like, how are you so joyful and praising of God amidst having faced things beyond what I could imagine? And through singing, I started to learn the languages, because we sang in about 5 different languages from across Central and East Africa. And I had the opportunity early on to go visit in Rwanda initially. I unexpectedly had that rare lung disease situation that I had mentioned, so that ended up delaying my trip by a couple of years, actually. But again, blessing in disguise, I ended up going there, and I was going to, that's a whole thing too. I was supposed to work in a specific with a specific organization. That didn't end up working out. I had like a intervention of people that came from 3 different countries to tell me not to do that. And so change gears. They presented me with this alternative. They're like, we know that you work at the American Red Cross. We really need help in this clinic in Burundi. So, and I had first gone, I spent a week in Burundi, then a week in Congo, then a week in Rwanda. I was supposed to stay in Rwanda then for like 6 months after that. What ended up happening though is those people from all those different countries came to Rwanda, and they were like, backup plan, we're going to take you back to Burundi. And if you're willing, have you work in the clinic. And so I was like, I'm on board, because it's not normal for people to come from 3 different countries to show up unannounced and tell you not to do something. So I trusted them. And I really felt drawn to the people in Burundi when I was there. Like, you know how you just sometimes energetically, you're just like, I am in the right place. That is how I felt the entire time I was in Burundi, and I knew I needed to go back. So when they presented that as the alternative plan, it felt right. So went back to Burundi, ended up working in the clinic. We did about monthly excursions to more rural areas, because we lived in the capital of Burundi, in Bujumbura. And we monthly would go to visit the Abatwa tribes, which are mostly known as the pygmy tribes to our culture. And they're the most underserved and discriminated against groups, and have a pretty big cycle of oppression, largely because of the cycle of not being educated, not being able to get jobs. There's a cycle of where families would send their children into the city to beg for money in order to provide food for the family, while they took care of the rest of their family and the home. So to break that cycle, we would monthly go to visit their community and bring bags, a big bag of rice and a big bag of beans for each family that wanted the help. And what we did is incentivize essentially education within their own community. So we would provide food for the family as long as they educated their children. And so it helped break down simple cycles of oppression on the most oppressed communities and marginalized communities in Burundi. And that was a big part of, I feel like I'm still learning lessons from that time when I was 22 living there. But it really ended up being a special place. And what I mostly didn't expect is I ended up singing like 3 days a week, because at the opening ceremony when I first arrived in Burundi, traditionally, like, they do presentations, and then you have a time to give thanks, to speak to the group. And I chose to sing a song that I had learned in that African gospel choir I was in. And little did I know that that simple act would end up kind of like giving me a singing tour while I was there. And I ended up linking up with a well-known artist in Rwanda and touring partially in Rwanda and Burundi with them, and it was really a magical time. But the last time that I still haven't gone back to Burundi since 2009, again, because I had a translator who he would translate from Kirundi to Swahili for me, because I speak way better Swahili than Kirundi. And in the rural areas, they don't know as much Swahili. So, but he was killed at a roadblock by police as an act of genocide. They essentially separated them by tribe and killed one in front of the other. So that was also a very personal experience with genocide, that made me question the safety of whether it was okay for me to go back, because that was a regular roadblock that we had passed through to get to those rural areas for the excursions we did every month. So still haven't been back to Burundi. That's one of my goals. I hope that the next time I am able to return, that I'll be able to visit both Burundi and Rwanda, and hopefully Congo as well, because the cultures are similar, but also very different. And the art in Congo, the arts are amazing everywhere, but in Congo, like it's like an arts and music centered culture. So really hope to return there as well.
Oh, that's amazing. It's just every time I talk to you, it's just like I'm more and more fascinated. But it's like it really does hold true, right? Like just the fact that, being fearless, right, has ultimately led you to all of these experiences. Like, just thinking back at it is, just the fact that when we start talking about inclusivity, the fact that you were just a newcomer to Maine and how you were accepted by another culture and how you just embraced that, how they embraced you, right? Like, do you feel like being exposed to these sorts of experiences, did they really kind of tap into some talents, some things that might have been suppressed that you never even knew existed simply because you were exposed to it and you're like, let me try that? Because I'm just amazed, just the fact that, just all of what you've tapped into artistically, musically, just speaking the languages, just, your travel, it's just fascinating.
I absolutely believe that that living in Burundi and being open to, I guess, the flow of life, like as things come to me, I'm a person, I think that, I'm a person who looks for the lessons around me, especially having experienced multiple near-death experiences. I really kind of take things as they come, one thing at a time, and try to look for the lessons where they're at, because I believe that God, the universe, whatever you want to call our interconnected energy, will put you where you're supposed to be with the lessons that you're supposed to receive. And just like was said earlier about, you're often given lessons that aren't for you, they're for someone else later. I also believe that, like every single challenge that I've faced along the way, every single person that I've met has led me to where I'm supposed to go. Whether it was, Burundi and having the opportunity, being open to the opportunities that lied there and trusting my intuition and trusting in general. But definitely the fearlessness, like you had said, does play a role, because having experienced multiple near-death experience, it took away my fear of death. I've been on that line multiple times, and I know that it is not as scary as I once thought it was. So it's I feel like once you like have that outside looking in almost experience on yourself and your life, it's helped me to really embrace things as they come, embrace the lessons, even try to embrace the challenges. I do have to like mentally talk myself through things sometimes to remind myself as I'm in the midst of the challenges. But I really try, I'm a big believer in turning pain into purpose. and using that to guide your leadership, and lead others, because it's through that compassion, through understanding through your own experiences, that you can have greater compassion for others. And then it's through opening up your eyes to different perspectives that you might not understand, of how you can also expand your own compassion, and often find the lessons that you might not have if you're limiting your perspective to whatever your self limitations are.
Talk about all the different things that you've done and the leadership roles that you have. You know, a lot of times when people read people's bios, they're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, this person is wonderful. But I'm sure it didn't come without its challenges. And can you speak to some of the challenges that you have faced in your own leadership journey and how you got to where you are and how you've kind of overcome them?
Sure. So there's a lot of different directions that I've gone in. I think that probably one of my biggest challenges is sometimes focusing, because I am so multifaceted as a person. So sometimes figuring out where to prioritize my energy can be a challenge. Sometimes I say yes too much because I get excited, and I like looking for those signs, those people, those connections, those networks, seeing where those opportunities bring me. Sometimes I get too excited and I take on too much, and that can lead to burnout. So I think some of the challenges have been around self-compassion as well, and learning how to, like, what routines serve me, what might take me a little bit further away from it, but also looking for the lessons in that and giving myself grace when I put too much on my plate, and mentally preparing myself for when I know things are going to be a little chaotic. I think that has helped serve me. Uh, Launching a magazine, so like that all came out of literally having COVID and getting long COVID and not being approved to work longer than 4-hour shifts at my 12-hour shift days at the American
Wow.
Red Cross. So it was like my body was telling me that it was time for me to move on. And it forced me to take different steps. So, like, while I was in this stage of, because essentially I'd have a relapse of symptoms after a couple hours on the job at the Red Cross. And especially we had to wear masks every day. It was, you remember the craziness. So, a couple hours in, I'd lose my voice, and then I'd start having respiratory symptoms again. And my doctor was like, you are not going to heal until you stop working and you actually let yourself rest. So that was a big eye opener for me. But it's also the turning point that really launched me into the place where I am right now. Because in that time, I decided to enroll in a personal training and nutritionist course and get certified for those. So I started coaching. Like right after that, I ended up working at a gym for 6 months. And it changed my whole path toward coaching. And at that same time, also, I had a friend who, because I used to use Art Love Lifestyle as my personal art brand, with the idea of like, hey, maybe down the line, I could turn that into a magazine, because I could take each art, love, life, and style, and everything that I love falls in one of those categories. So I was like, that would be a pretty awesome magazine. And I had a friend during that same time who's like, why don't you just do it and start the magazine? And at that point, I had submitted on the other end, because I had just sort of started in the world of pageantry in 2018. And so through that, I had learned how to submit for features in magazines. I saved every single communication. I had been on the other end of it, so I kind of knew the process of back and forth with PR, with designers, with editors, how to submit photos, what the requirements were. I saved every contract I ever had. And so at that point it was in October of 2021, I was like, maybe I actually could do it, because I also had a like a design app that I could use, so I could resize everything to what I needed it to be. And I was like, maybe I actually could do it. And so that also really launched me in a whole different direction. It put me in a different position in the fashion industry and the pageant industry. And that really put me into a leadership role where I could actually leverage that leadership to build inclusivity, to challenge perceptions of beauty, to make people think in different ways, as well as feature different people from different cultures, highlight different perspectives, highlight underrepresented voices, and use that as a media tool to elevate what I wanted to see more of in the fashion industry, but as well as in pageantry. Like, all of the things sort of came together with my vision through Art, Love, Lifestyle magazine. And then building off of that, I ended up having an opportunity. So I ended up winning International Mrs. USA, very, again, unexpectedly, because when I first got into pageantry, I was like, do you know who I am? Like, I had really long locked hair. And I was like, I was very involved in activism, and my husband was on the Portland City Council. And I was like, I'm not sure that I'm like the pageant girl that you think I am. And but it was actually everything that made me question whether pageantry was the right place for me, was actually what made me realize maybe that's exactly the direction I should go in, is because I questioned my own beauty standards, essentially. Like, I don't fit the mold of the traditional body type. Like, I literally was told when I was growing up, you could never be a model because of your muscular aesthetic, essentially. And there, so all of these like things that I had put into question, I was like, actually, maybe that's exactly why I need to go and be that representation. Also, as I'm married to a man, but I'm also openly pansexual. And as a member of the LGBTQ community, there's also, I had this vision of what like pageantry kind of allowed, and I saw it as a much more conservative endeavor, and wasn't sure how I would be received, to be quite frank. So, so I also had to kind of put my fears aside with that. And that edge is actually what has really allowed me to step more fully into my authenticity. And it's also exactly like the people that follow me through pageantry, the successes that I've gotten through fashion have been through pushing that edge. And through what I try to represent is unify people around the values of compassion, so that people from any political, religious background, that we can find where we're connected and move from there. And through that, open people's eyes to different perspectives, and maybe not fully understand, but be able to hold space for that. And I had the opportunity to produce a New York Fashion Week show called True Beauty New York Fashion Week, and I've produced that the last 2 years. And that also has, again, like labeled me as a disruptor in the fashion industry. But I'm here for it. I'm like, this is where I've been put, and I would not have been there if I didn't take the risks out of my own fears. I had to step outside of my own limitations around beauty standards. I had to really self-evaluate and clarify my own vision, my own goals. And it's been through taking those risks, stepping outside of my comfort zone, allowing myself to be in different groups of people with all different perspectives on both like my personal identity as well as a leader and as a disruptor. So that has almost solidified my desire to like it's solidified my place in the industry, but it's also made me realize that sometimes our fears are where we're supposed to take the risks.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe those are what we're supposed to, look at in order to clarify where we're at, what our vision is, and how to move forward to make the change that we would like to see.
Yeah, so being that disruptor, right? It's just like that's just the way that you really as a woman, as a leader, really just working with others, just, in all forms of your leadership here is just having people feel comfortable with who they are truly and providing them with that confidence to really push that envelope, right? Because that's really where the growth happens. And just curious to know, like, when you're doing like your mind body compassion, like your there's so many pieces of you. When you're working with clients from that coaching perspective, right? Like
Yeah.
what do you often encounter, right? Like you finding individuals that are very like they're limiting themselves, like what is like the typical, or they might not be a typical, but
Yeah. Well, I take every single client of mine, whether it's for pageantry or otherwise, walk people through essentially a self-discovery process. And what I find is, so I have like my week 1 worksheet. And what I find is that that's usually the hardest. And that's where we're have like writing down what are your strengths, what are your achievements. And what I found is that especially women have been programmed to like hide their value and to sort of we're conditioned to suppress certain aspects of ourselves due to social conditioning and not wanting to be boastful. So I found as a trend, I guess, through all my coaching clients that a lot of people and women especially have a hard time really like owning their worth and coming out of their limitations. So like week 2, we dive more into weaknesses and like how to break outside of those fears, and we tackle those fears head on. And that's all like very early, but those fundamentals that happen in those initial 2 weeks, those are like lifelong evolving aspects of how to step further into confidence. But yeah, I would say that like we're also think that it's selfish to prioritize ourselves and to try to become confident, even from posturing your own body. I would say probably a good half or more of my clients start off very like physically making themselves smaller than they are, not allowing themselves to take up the space that they should be taking up. And everybody has limiting beliefs. And it's once people start realizing and owning their own story, owning their own challenges, owning their pathways, addressing the traumas they've experienced, addressing where they're holding themselves back. It's really when they start taking risks to step out of their comfort zone and step toward their purpose. That's really where the magic happens, is when you take your natural born talent. I don't know if you've ever heard of like Ikigai, but your natural born talent, what you love to do and are passionate about. And when you can merge those into taking steps toward your purpose, that's where like you're really unstoppable from there.
You said something earlier that stood out to me when you talked about when I asked you about the challenges, and you talked about pretty much burning yourself out. And a lot of times we put burnout on other people because of what they are putting on us. And sometimes it's just us not using no as a full sentence and burning ourselves out. And so I think that goes hand in hand with what you also just said about really showing yourself compassion and like really putting yourself first. And because we're givers, a lot of times just keep giving. And like you said, like we don't know how to say no because we like it all. I can do it
Yeah.
all. But the reality is you cannot. You cannot do it
Yeah.
all. Pick one, okay? Then
Yeah.
pick the next one. And so I think that what you're describing is not always external, especially people that are self-motivated and they just want to do it all. Like, and it's all good stuff. And it's like, but you can't do it all right now. Do one, then do the next. And I think it's sometimes us that we have to look at ourselves and be like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's really take care of our health. You mentioned sitting up. As I'm leaning in because I'm like, oh my gosh, tell me more. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I should sit up. Like, so like I don't have good posture. Hey, let me fix that. So it's like the small things that we don't even think about because we're just so used to going, 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 going. And so I really appreciate you talking to us today. Like, there's probably so much more that you can like share and things. If there was one thing that you would be able to tell people to take away, because a lot of times we like to do things that are practical. What are some practical things when we talk about really taking care of ourselves and showing up in the room with that big personality and being okay? What are a few things that people can do to like show up as their best self?
I personally, again, I think it comes down to putting everything through that lens of compassion, whether it's through self-compassion, compassion toward others, compassion toward pets and animals, compassion toward the environment. I think that if you're trying to put things in perspective and trying to make the next right best decision for yourself, if you put things through that lens of compassion and open yourself up to not be to like peeling back those layers of fears and limitations and limiting beliefs. Sorry, my puppy's
He
um,
wanted to be a part. He said, tag me in.
um, I think that for me, that I always find the next best right decision for me. Because that's it's a guiding principle. And whether it's like compassionate communication, like there's certain aspects that I've essentially broken down into workshops through the Compassionate Leadership Project around compassionate communication and nonviolent communication, compassion towards others, self-compassion, and coping strategies and stress management. All of these things really come down to that single value of compassion. And I think that if we all put intention into that value, that we could literally heal every single aspect of the world. And that's where it was born from, was that one question of if you could change one thing in the world, what would it be and why?
Okay.
Yes. Having like coming from this space with love, respect, good intentions. I mean, there is a lot of great stuff here. And I mean, this has just been such an awesome conversation. And I mean, I think this question could probably be answered a million and one ways, but what makes you an unregulated leader?
Mm.
We're going to probably have a project coming out of this. It's going to be like the pageant question that spurred it.
I would say fearless authenticity.
Wonderful combination. Yes. Oh, I love that. When I hear that, I think about not following the status quo. And we live in a world where everyone just does what everyone else does. They do what their boss says to do because they want a promotion or because they want to whatever, but it's not the right thing to do. So I love that. You should put that on the back of your t-shirt. Like make you a t-shirt and put that on there. I love that. Add that to your line. Add that to your, right?
Yeah.
I will.
It's going to be like the next dress she creates.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Unregulated Leadership. It was so great to have you. I look forward to connecting with you off of this because now I'm like, I need to know what she's doing next. Where's she going? What's happening? And so thank you so much. Any final words from Christina or our special guest here?
I just want to honor you both for doing this work, and you both are doing so much good for the world and for the students that you're bringing through this. And I love the concept of unregulated leadership, and I love the energy that both of you are bringing to that. So thank you so much for having me. I feel honored, and I also can't wait for our next conversation.
So
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina.